straighten. Yeah. Need to straighten. Probably not. Oh, there's a good one. Definitely not. Hello everyone and welcome back to the shed. You join me today sorting out some screws that I removed from salvaged timber. This back pile is all screws that I can throw straight back into use. The head isn't mashed and the thread is okay, plus they're nice and straight still. The right pile over here are total write-offs, mashed heads, no threads and a bit bent or totally sheared. And these ones down here are okay, but they need a bit of a straighten, and I can normally get away doing that with a hammer and then they can be reused. There is just one small problem with that though, because a few weeks ago this happened to my hammer. I already knew that there was a weak spot coming. I could see cracks around the neck of the handle here, but then eventually it just gave up and snapped on me. It is a shame. This was my nanny's and I inherited it from her when she died. The head is really old and cool, has lots of patina and character to it, as does the handle. It's so smooth and all the little marks telling a story. Really cool. So it is a shame that it's broken, but I'm going to have a go today at rehandling it. The original handle is made of oak as far as I can tell, and I have this new piece here that I've been keeping for absolutely ages because I could already tell for some time that this was going to break. I could see the stress marks near the head. So I kept this aside just for the job, and when it did finally break I can now get around to using it. So thank you for joining me today, but just before we get started I will ask that if you enjoy the video, do please consider leaving it a like and maybe subscribing to the channel. You can see just how perfect this piece of oak is for a new handle if we compare the two together. You have to remember that we've got to add on about 2 inches there to go from here up through the head of the hammer, but this handle here sits just perfectly onto the new piece, meaning I have to take off just an ever so small amount of material from either side here in order to get it down to size. I'm going to try and do this exact same size handle if I can. We've got a little bit of extra room up here for the head. Can lay it on there. And even better, if I put it in this side, the widest part of the original handle down here is pretty much exactly the same width as the new piece. So it really is fitting like a glove. Should also mean that I don't have to spend too long doing it because there's that little material to remove. It does, however, mean that I only have one shot at making it, otherwise I'll run out of material. So the key for today is definitely going to be going slow. But fingers crossed, if I take my time, I can make the use of this really lovely tight grain structure and make myself a new handle that will be really strong and do this another, I don't know, 60 years at least. This handle must have been on there. See if we can make this new one last that long as well. First step is going to be to trace around all the dimensions of where the old handle used to be, how big it used to be. And then I can set to work on what will probably be a lot of draw knifing, rasping, planing, sanding, angle grinding probably, to try and get this down to final shape. Okay, I've paused here because I am getting close, hopefully you can see there, to the final dimension in this orientation here. I will need to do quite a lot more in this orientation, because if you look there, there's actually, although this fat swollen bit here is the same width, up here at the neck where it goes into the head is really quite thin, so I'm going to have to take quite a lot off from these sides. But what I think I'm going to do now is just remove what's left of the handle in the head out of the head. There we go, one clear head. Straight away I know that that needs to take some serious slimming down before it's going to fit into that hole.
Got it!
Okay folks, I'm pretty happy with this now. We are getting pretty close to the final dimensions, both this way, hopefully you can see there, and this way. There's really not a lot sticking out from behind the original handle, which means we're getting really nice and close to those final dimensions. I do have to go to the corners and make it more rounded, obviously, so it's comfortable to hold, but already feeling it in my hand, they are pretty much the same, which is just what I wanted. That's good. I'm going to leave this top end just till the end, because putting it into the head is going to be probably the most tense and tricky bit. So before that, I'm going to get the handle how I want it, and then just try and leave this to be a uniform, parallel, straight shaft, so that it can hopefully then just get narrowed down gradually until it just squeezes into the head, because obviously I want a really tight fit in there.
That's what she said!
So now I think I can probably put the chisels aside and turn more to the drawer knife to just start rounding out these corners, and that's going to be what makes it more comfortable to hold. Okay, I'm not a professional, so Okay, we'll try that again now my head's in shot. I'm not a professional, so I don't think I'm ever going to be able to get this handle as rounded as this one is. Plus the fact that this has probably also been rounded just by use over time. Although the corners on this are still quite square, it is comfortable to hold, so I think now I am going to move on to sandpaper. Like I said, I'm liking how it's feeling in my hand so far, and it's not too dissimilar to this one. I've also decided on an orientation. I've drawn myself a little arrow so I know which way is the front, and I can tell from all the overstrike marks here that this is the front of this one, so that's been helpful to compare. So yeah, I'm going to go to sandpaper on the handle now, and then although I have started up the top here, we are going to have to do a lot more up here to get it to really tight fit into the head, and the other bit is the bottom. I still need to work on that some. Right, I've sanded this just lightly to take off the marks from the rasp as best I can, but I'm not going to go all the way with the sanding until I've got the head fitted, because if I mess that up and, God forbid, have to chuck this out and start again, then I'll have wasted my time doing the handle finish, because you know what I mean, I'll have wasted my time. So now we're going to move on to putting the head on. Now in this orientation here, we're actually pretty close to getting it to go in. It's in this orientation here that we've got to take off the most. The hole there is really quite narrow, hopefully you can see, so we're going to have to take off a fair old amount from the sides, this one and this one, to get it to go in. I'm also going to attempt, because last time it had 3 wedges in it, I'm going to try and just put one in, and I want to put my one wedge in, so running front to back across the head or through the eye, but then because of that I also want the handle to have a sort of wedge going this way, side to side. So I'm going to try and put a wooden wedge in the handle there, which will mean sawing down, putting the handle in, putting the wood wedge in across the head, like this, and then putting the metal wedge in lengthways, down the length of the head. That's the plan. Hopefully it works. First, though, we've got to get it to go inside here before we can put any wedges in. And the key to this really is that I can take more material off, but I cannot stick it back on. And ideally, I want the wood to be contacting 100% of the steel inside the eye here, because that'll give me the most amount of friction and the best hold on the head. So I really don't want to take off too much at all. So I need to take off tiny little bits, check it, tiny little bit, check it. It's a big test of my patience. Taking a look down through the head here, you can see those two little slithers of daylight below where I've taken off ever so slightly too much material. So yeah, I've just got to very carefully now rasp further and further down here until this head comes all the way down and seats hopefully on that pencil line. Well, I knew it wouldn't go perfectly, and there is a bit too much gap at the top of the eye where I've made the tip of it, the very end of this handle, too narrow. However, at the bottom it's nice and tight, and when I whack the handle down into the head with the mallet, it does seat very tightly. So next step, I think, is going to be to saw down the length of this, probably in a little V shape in fact, so that I can drive a wedge in there and spread out the top of that handle without splitting the rest of it. I'm going to use the hacksaw for this because it's got finer teeth than the big saw, so hopefully it will make me a nicer V and not run the risk of splitting the rest of the handle as much. But I have never done this before, so... Okay, one wedge. I don't know if that's deep enough. I don't know if I need to make it wider in the middle. I think I want to take it deeper because the head is going to go all the way down here. And but then again, I don't know. No, let's go deeper, even if it's just a single cut down the middle. And then no more than that. Now, when you see people doing these who are a lot better than me, they will often put the secondary wedge in with a piece of wood that is a completely different colour to the handle material, so that it really pops and shows some nice contrast. Now, most of my hardwood is oak, but I do have this one piece of ash, which is a lot lighter in colour, or slightly lighter in colour than the oak. And hopefully one day I'm going to whittle a spoon out of this, but I think I can spare a little bit to make a wedge for this. Okay, I've made it, and I'm hoping it's going to be the right size, but really I have no idea. And the only way to really find out is to just send it, so you might as well, I think. Yeah, let's get it put together with some glue. Okie dokie, genuinely worried about this one. No, it doesn't fit into the head. It doesn't fit into the eye. Bloody hammer. It needs to get thinner. It needs to get thinner quick. It didn't go too terribly, I hope. I have split off a very small bit of the front of the handle here, where the head was coming down and was hitting the shoulder that I put in the handle. But I think I'll be able to rasp that off and it shouldn't be too much of a problem. There's no split in the middle of the handle, which is what I was really worried about. And up top, I think I've driven in the wedge enough. Yeah, hopefully that's okay. And I will probably leave it a little while now for the glue to dry before I have to saw this off flush. And I do have to saw it off right flush because when I'm using this to claw out nails, I want it to be able to roll across the head like this without having the top of the handle get in the way. So I need to saw it off properly flush before I can put the metal wedge in. Okay, that's not looking too terrible. Hopefully that will be nice and strong. Like I say, it's come pretty much level with the top, which is what we want, and it is seated down on the handle where I want it to, on that little shoulder that I made. And she actually feels pretty good in the hand, you know, not too different from how I remember it being last time with the original handle. So hopefully that's going to stay on there for a good amount of time. If it doesn't, I can always try again. I can make some minor adjustments to the top, maybe put another wedge in. But fingers crossed it holds. Don't have any accidents with it flying off and hitting somebody. So yeah, now I'm just going to carry on sanding the handle, because now that this is on hopefully permanently, I can spend the time and make the handle really nice and smooth. And then I think I might even have to spread this over a couple of days, because I'm probably going to have to go and get some boiled linseed oil, because I believe that's going to be the best thing to put on my handle here and preserve it. So I haven't got any, so I'll have to go and get some and put it on and film this across a couple of days. Right then folks, after 2 hours I think of sanding, pretty much non-stop, this is where we are up to. And I must say that I am very pleased with how the handle now looks. I've also sanded the top, and you can hopefully see there the contrast between the oak and the ash. So hopefully when we've got some linseed oil on here, it will really look nice. I've also, as you can probably tell, used the Dremel to put my initials and the date on, and I've just infilled it with black paint, although that does mean that now, because I was so messy with it, my shaky hands, I will have to come back and just sand off the top of there to make it neater before I linseed oil it, but that shouldn't take too long. So all that's left to do now really is for me to put this down, and then we'll jump forward and seek future Chris. Thank you, past Chris. Now, since you last saw me, I've done two things. Number one was sand off the letters here so that they are now nice and clear, not just with the paint in the infilled bits. And the second thing was look into what exactly to put on my handle, because unfortunately I made a bit of a discovery. I bought a bottle of boiled linseed oil and then read on the back, do not use on oak timbers, which very much confused me, because as far as I was aware, you should put this stuff on any wooden handle no matter what it was made of. So I then got looking into why you shouldn't use boiled linseed oil on oak, and it seems that the overarching reason is that it takes a long time to dry, and then often seeps out later on, making you a mess. And also tends to shorten the life of the oak even, which is obviously not what I want. I want it to prolong the wood and protect it from the sun and from water and dirt and my abusing it when I'm using it. And knowing that, I then had to think, well, what on earth do I put on the oak then? I have heard that you could just probably leave it, but from my experience, I want to put something on it, because in things I've made in the past, like say the mallet head, I left this untreated, and for some reason, like some of the other oak in the shed with no protection on it, has started to go black on the top and the front. And this one here, this piece especially, has started to get some small cracks in it, which I believe would probably happen to any wood that you left untreated. But having had this happen, I thought, no, I'm definitely going to put something on the handle of the hammer. But looking into which product was best to use turned into quite the rabbit hole. Every YouTube video and website that I looked at said something different. Teak oil, tongue oil, hemp oil, boiled linseed oil. None of them specifying which oil or products you should use on oak or any specific wood. They just said this is great for all of the woods. So part of me then said, screw it, just put the boiled linseed oil on the hammer, I'm sure it'll be fine. But I don't want to ruin it. And after all, why would they say on the bottle, do not use on oak specifically, if they didn't mean it? Especially when I went hunting for other products at home, found this bottle of teak oil in the shed elsewhere, and this also says, not recommended for use on oak. What on earth am I supposed to put on it? So having done that much unsuccessful research, and having had a good think about it as well, this is what I've decided to do. First of all, I'm not going to bother buying any more products for now. I'm just going to stick with either the linseed oil or the teak oil that I've already got. I am a tight bugger after all. Second, I'm going to put one of those on the new hammer handle, and I'm just going to see what happens and how I get on with it. Learn from experience, and if I have to, I can always remake the handle, because at the end of the day, it only took one day to make, and there are imperfections in this which I would still like to improve on. So we're going to use this as a long-term experiment. And the third thing I'm going to do to begin our experimentation and to decide which product to put on the new hammer is test these three pieces. The first is the end of the piece of oak that I used to make the new handle. So I know for a fact that this is oak, and I can see what happens when I put both teak oil and linseed oil on it. I'm also going to take a small offcut off this little bit of ash that I have, and again put both on this and see what happens to that in comparison. And third, I've still got the original handle, so I'm going to give this a sand and try putting the two products on that too. It might well reveal, depending on how it turns out in comparison to the oak and the ash, what this actually is. First thing I need to do is give the old handle a bit of a sand down. There we go, I've left one side done just with sandpaper, and I also took the rasp to this side, so this is much coarser. I'm now also going to do the same thing to the ash, and there we go. The ash is ready as well, and I've got everything set to go. Alright, I've got my 3 bits of wood. I've got 2 brand new rags to put the oil on with. Getting all scientific here, I'll just put on some gloves so I don't get it all over my hands, because I believe you're not supposed to get too much contact with either of the oils. And we'll start with the boiled linseed. Going onto some ash to begin with, then onto some oak, and lastly the old hammer handle. Okay, let's try teak oil instead, much thinner than the boiled linseed. Well, they actually seem to have had much the same effect, really. I'm struggling to tell the difference between the teak here and the boiled linseed on the ash, on both sides of it, the rougher side and the smoother side. Same on the oak, really, on both items. I'm going to have to label up here so I can tell which was which. Okay, so now we've oiled everything up. I think I'm going to leave it maybe a day, let it dry and soak in, and then we'll come back tomorrow and see how it feels. Well folks, it hasn't even been overnight. I was just here doing some other jobs around the shed, and I've since looked over at these and I think they're already dry enough, and I've come to my decision. I'm going to put boiled linseed oil on the new handle because yes, this is a little bit more greasy residue-y than the teak oil is on the other end, but they're still going to leave somewhat of a residue, and I can't see this being disastrous. Looking at the result that the boiled linseed oil there on this end of the stick of the piece of oak has left. Yes, it's darkened it a bit, but so has the teak. Doesn't look bad to me. I think it will be fine. I'm certainly willing to give it a go on the new handle. It seems to have had pretty much the same result on the ash and indeed the old handle, although I'm still really none the wiser as to what this is, although I think my best guess would be oak, maybe hickory. But yes, I'm still none the wiser for definite on what that is. Whoopsie. So yeah, like I say, it does seem to have had pretty much the same effect on all of them. The boiled linseed oil is a bit darker, a bit more greasy, but overall not that much different, and I don't think it's going to do the wood any harm. So maybe the people that told me it doesn't matter what you put on it, anything will do, were right after all. So I'll put some gloves back on and we'll oil up the handle and finish my hammer off. And even if it does have catastrophic results on the handle like I said it might do, then I don't mind making a new one, to be honest. Like I said, this one isn't perfect. I've not made many handles and I'm still learning, so I could probably do with the practice. And I'm going to want to put a lot on the end grain of the handle, because that's where it's going to really soak it up. So there we are folks, boiled linseed oil is what I've gone with. I don't think it looks too bad, so hopefully nothing untoward happens with it, and I'll give it several more coats in the coming days and months. I believe the process really should be once a day for a week, once a week for a month, once a month for a year, and then once a year with boiled linseed oil on handles. So hopefully I've made the right decision, but this is how it's turned out. So if you've enjoyed watching the video, do please consider leaving it a like and subscribing to the channel. I'll see you next time. Goodbye.